The classroom was cold that morning. Hannah sat in her usual spot near the back, her notebook open but empty. She watched the other students file in, laughing and talking in their native languages. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked almost human but not quite. The Galactic Academy was full of strange creatures from distant worlds. Hannah was one of only 3 humans in the entire school. The others were Do-hyun and Mirai. They sat together sometimes in the cafeteria, the only familiar faces in a sea of aliens. But even among humans, Hannah was quiet. She preferred to watch and listen. Professor Vekthar entered the room. He was 9 feet tall with silver scales that caught the light. His species, the Saurians, were warriors. They came from a world of hunters and battles. He looked down at the students with his yellow eyes lingering on Hannah for a moment longer than necessary. The professor did not like humans. Hannah knew this. Everyone knew this. He made small comments during lectures about weak species who got lucky, about prey animals who found technology by accident. He never said the word human, but everyone understood. Today was the final exam for threat assessment class. Students needed to prove they could identify danger and respond correctly. Professor Vekthar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. He had something special planned. 2 guards in heavy armor wheeled in a massive cage. The cage was 10 feet tall and made of thick metal bars. Inside was something that made several students gasp and move back in their seats. Even the tough Kolvari students who came from a warlike culture looked nervous. It was a Ravager. Hannah had read about them but never seen one in person. The creature stood 12 feet tall on 6 powerful legs. Its body was covered in black and red armor plating that looked harder than steel. Each of its 6 limbs ended in claws as long as Hannah's forearm. The claws were serrated like knives. The Ravager had 4 eyes, each one burning with intelligence and rage. It paced in the cage, moving with deadly grace despite its massive size. When it breathed, steam came from vents in its armor. The air around it seemed to shimmer with heat. Professor Vekthar explained the exercise. The cage sat in the center of the room, surrounded by an energy field. The field was strong enough to stop a missile. Perfectly safe, he said. Each student would approach the cage one at a time. They would observe the Ravager's reaction and learn to recognize true predator behavior. Then the professor's eyes found Hannah again. His smile grew wider. Since humans claim to be the dominant species of Earth, he said, perhaps their representative would like to go first. Alone. As a demonstration for the class. The room went silent. A few students shifted uncomfortably. The small Pixari in the front row made a worried sound. Even the aggressive Kolvari looked uneasy. This was not normal classroom procedure. This was something else. Across the room, Do-hyun started to stand up. His face showed concern. Mirai reached out as if to say something. But Hannah was already moving. She stood smoothly, her chair making no sound. She walked down the steps toward the arena floor. Her footsteps were quiet. She did not hurry. She did not hesitate. Her face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. Just calm focus. Several students later said that was the first moment they realized something was different about humans. The Ravager had been pacing its cage with restless energy. It moved like a caged tiger, all coiled muscle and barely controlled violence. The creature had been starved for 3 days to make it more aggressive. The handlers had used electric prods just to get it into the cage. But when Hannah stepped onto the arena floor, the Ravager stopped moving. It went completely still. Its 4 eyes locked onto her small figure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature's posture changed. It shifted its weight backward, away from her. Hannah walked toward the cage. The holographic safety line glowed on the floor, marking the recommended distance. She walked right past it. She stopped only when she stood inches from the energy field. So close she could feel the heat coming off the Ravager's body. So close she could see every scar on its armor plating. She tilted her head slightly, studying the creature. Her eyes never blinked. In the amphitheater above, 60 students held their breath. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how anything behaved when facing a Ravager. The Ravager took a step backward. Just one step, but everyone saw it. A Category 9 threat, one of the most dangerous creatures in known space, had just backed away from an unarmed human girl who barely reached 5.5 feet tall. Professor Vekthar's smile faded. This was not what he had planned. The monitors tracking the Ravager's vital signs, showed something impossible. Its heart rate was increasing, but not with aggression. With stress. With something that looked like fear. Hana spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear in the silent room. She asked the professor if he knew about Earth's predators. Before he could answer, she continued talking. She explained that humans organized predators by how they hunted. Ambush predators hid and waited. Pack hunters worked together. Pursuit predators chased their prey. And then there were persistence predators. Hana took another step closer to the force field. The Ravager pressed itself against the back wall of its cage. Persistence predators, she said, did not have claws or fangs or venom. They did not need them. They just never stopped. They followed. They tracked. They ran their prey down over hours or days or weeks. They never gave up. The Ravager made a sound. It was low and oscillating like nothing it had ever made before. The computer system identified the sound after a few seconds. It was a distress call. An apex predator from a death world was calling for help. Hana placed her hand flat against the force field. The energy barrier crackled at her touch. Her palm was steady. Her eyes never left the Ravager. The creature's distress calls grew louder and more urgent. It tried to make itself smaller, pressing harder against the cage wall. She told the class about Earth, about a world where the deadliest predators were not the ones with the biggest teeth. They were the ones who could run the longest, the ones who could track prey across vast distances, the ones who could plan and think and coordinate. Humans hunted mammoths, she said, giant elephants with thick fur and massive tusks. Humans hunted cave bears twice their size. They hunted saber-toothed cats with fangs like daggers. They did not kill these creatures with strength. They killed them with patience. They followed them until the animals could not run anymore, until their hearts gave out, until they died from pure exhaustion. The Ravager slammed itself against the far wall, desperate for more distance. Its claws scraped against the metal floor. The sound reached frequencies that hurt some species' ears. On Earth, Hana continued, humans hunted megafauna into extinction. Entire species disappeared because humans never stopped hunting them. Professor Vekthar finally found his voice. He ordered her to step back. This was supposed to be a controlled demonstration, but Hana did not move. She asked him a question. Did he know why humans evolved forward-facing eyes? Why their bodies were built for running long distances? Why they could sweat to cool down and keep running when other animals collapsed from heat? In the amphitheater, Mirai stood up. She added her voice to Hana's explanation. Human ancestors ran down antelope in the hot African sun. They followed wounded animals for days. They threw rocks with deadly accuracy. They used tools because they did not need natural weapons. They were the weapons. Do-hyun joined in. He reminded the class about the videos they had watched in xenobiology. Humans jogging after gazelles for 8 hours straight. Humans tracking buffalo for 3 days without stopping. Humans running down horses until the horses died from heat stroke. The Ravager had stopped making sounds. It stood frozen against the back wall, all 4 eyes locked on Hana. It was the look of prey that knew it had been marked. The look of an animal that understood it was facing something more dangerous than itself. Hana finally stepped back from the force field. The Ravager did not relax. It kept watching her with wide, terrified eyes. She turned to face the class, and 60 students saw what the Ravager had seen. Those forward-facing predator eyes. The slight smile that did not reach those eyes. The complete absence of fear. In that moment, the entire galaxy's understanding of humanity began to change. Professor Vekthar tried to take control of the situation. His voice was not as steady as before. He ordered the handlers to remove the creature. The demonstration was over, he announced. But his words sounded hollow in the silent amphitheater. The 2 handlers approached the cage carefully. They wore full protective gear and carried electric prods. These same handlers had needed 4 people and sedation drugs to load the Ravager that morning. Now the creature practically jumped into its transport container. It wanted to be anywhere except near the human female. As they wheeled the cage toward the exit, the Ravager kept its eyes on Hana. Even as the distance grew, even as they reached the doors, it never looked away. Its 4 eyes tracked her with absolute focus. Later, the handlers would report that the creature refused to eat for 2 days. It showed signs of trauma that they had never seen before in a Ravager. When the doors closed behind the cage, the spell broke. The amphitheater erupted into noise. Students talked in a dozen different languages. Some voices were scared. Some were confused. Some were excited. The Kolvari students moved away from where Dohyun and Mirai sat. The small Pixari representative activated her emergency communicator. Hannah walked back up the stairs to her seat. Her steps were just as quiet and steady as before. She sat down and opened her notebook. She acted like nothing unusual had happened, like she had not just made a Death World predator beg for escape. Professor Vekthar dismissed the class early. He left through the instructor's exit without looking at anyone. Students gathered in small groups in the hallways, talking in urgent whispers. Many of them looked at the three humans with new eyes, not with friendship, not yet, but with recognition of something they had not seen before. Within an hour, Hannah received a message. Dean Talvik wanted to see her immediately. The dean was a centaurian, a species that looked like tall, thin humanoids with silver skin and large eyes. Centaurians evolved as peaceful herbivores. They achieved space travel through cooperation and trade, not war. Hannah entered the dean's office. The room was decorated with plants from 100 different worlds. Dean Talvik stood by the window, her back to the door. When she turned around, Hannah saw something in her expression she had seen before. Unease, discomfort. The dean had always been polite to human students, but she had never been comfortable around them. The dean gestured for Hannah to sit. Then she activated a holographic display. It showed footage from the arena. Hannah watched herself approach the cage. She watched the Ravager back away. She watched the moment when a Death World predator recognized something more dangerous than itself. Dean Talvik asked the question directly. Did you know this would happen? Hannah considered her answer carefully. She said she suspected it might. Every human at the academy had noticed how other species reacted to them. The way conversations stopped when humans entered a room. The way predator species gave them extra space. The subtle avoidance. Hannah explained her theory. On some deep level, other species recognized what humans were. Not consciously, not intellectually, but instinctively. The same way prey animals on Earth could sense when a predator was watching them. The same way a gazelle knew to run before it even saw the lion. The dean was quiet for a long moment. Then she shared something she had never told anyone. Since humans joined the consortium, her office had received 17 formal complaints from various embassies. Not about human behavior, which had been excellent. Not about human aggression, which had been minimal. About human presence. The complaints used vague language, unsettling demeanor, predatory observation patterns, concerning lack of natural fear response. Dean Talvik had dismissed these as prejudice, as fear of the unknown. Now she was not so sure. Maybe the other species had been right to be worried. Maybe they had seen something real. Hannah asked if she was being expelled. Dean Talvik shook her head quickly. No, humans had done nothing wrong. They had broken no rules. They had acted with honor and respect. But the dean needed to understand what had happened in that arena. She needed to understand what humans really were, so Hannah explained. Earth was different from most worlds that developed space travel. Most civilizations came from planets with clear food chains, apex predators at the top, herbivores at the bottom, simple and stable. Earth was chaos. It had hundreds of dangerous species, competing predators, hostile environments, no clear winners. Humans survived that chaos not by being strongest or fastest. They survived by being the most adaptable, the most persistent, the most willing to work together. They developed tools because they needed every advantage. They formed complex social groups because alone they would die, and they developed persistence hunting. The ability to follow prey for hours or days until it collapsed. On Earth, Hannah explained, being hunted by humans was a special kind of terror. You could run. You could hide, but eventually the humans would find you. They would follow your tracks. They would appear on the horizon behind you, and they would never stop coming. Dean Talvik listened with growing concern. She asked about human capacity for violence. Were humans dangerous? Hannah's answer was careful. Humans could be very dangerous, yes, but they could also be very peaceful. The same persistence that made them deadly hunters also made them patient builders. The same ability to plan long-term strategies made them excellent at maintaining peace. The key, Hannah said, was that humans could choose. They were not mindless killers. They were not slaves to their instincts. They had the capacity for great violence, But they also had the capacity to control that violence, to direct it, to use it only when necessary. Dean Talvik stood and walked to the window again. She was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke without turning around. She said that her species had almost gone extinct twice in their history. Both times they were hunted by persistent predators native to their world. Predators that followed Centaurian herds for days, that never gave up, that ran them down until they could run no more. That fear was encoded in Centaurian genetics, passed down through countless generations. When Dean Talvik looked at humans, some ancient part of her brain recognized the hunting patterns, the forward-facing eyes, the patient observation, the calm persistence. Her species had almost been destroyed by creatures like that. Hana understood then. The Dean's discomfort was not prejudice. It was evolutionary memory. And if Centaurians felt that way, how many other species had similar histories? How many other civilizations had nearly been destroyed by persistent predators on their home worlds? The Dean turned back to face her. She asked what humans wanted. Why did they come to the stars? Were they looking for new things to hunt? Hana's response was immediate and sincere. Humans came to the stars for the same reason anyone did. To explore, to learn, to find their place in a larger universe. To make friends, not enemies. But Dean Talvik pressed the question. Could humans be trusted? If conflict arose, would humans choose peace or violence? Hana thought carefully before answering. She said that humans would always prefer peace. But if they had to fight, they would not stop until they won. That was the nature of persistence. Once humans committed to a goal, they pursued it completely. The good news, Hana added, was that humans could be just as persistent in pursuing peace as in pursuing war. When humans made friends, they were loyal. When humans made promises, they kept them. When humans committed to cooperation, they did not give up on it easily. Dean Talvik sat down heavily in her chair. She looked tired. She said that the incident today would have consequences. The footage was already spreading across the consortium networks. Billions of beings would see a human make a ravager afraid. There would be reactions, fear, anger, maybe even calls to restrict human expansion into space. But there would also be opportunity, the Dean said. A chance to help the galaxy understand humans, to show that persistence predators could be partners instead of threats. She asked Hana to think about something. Would she consider becoming a spokesperson for humanity, someone who could explain humans to other species honestly? Hana said she would think about it. As she left the Dean's office, she wondered what was happening to Do-hyun and Mirai. Were they being questioned too? Were they facing the same uncomfortable realizations about how other species saw them? Outside the administration building, Hana found her answer. A crowd of students had gathered. When they saw her, they went quiet. Some looked afraid. Some looked curious. Some looked respectful. But none of them looked at her the way they had that morning. Everything had changed. The galaxy now knew what humans really were, and there was no going back. The video spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within 3 days, 5 billion beings had watched footage of the incident. The moment when the Ravager backed away from Hana, the distress calls. The fear in a creature that feared nothing. It played on news networks from one side of the consortium to the other. Reactions varied wildly. On herbivore worlds, the video triggered panic. Millions of Centaurians watched and felt their ancient fears awakened. The Pixari Council held emergency sessions. Even peaceful species that had never seen war began discussing defense protocols. On predator worlds, the response was different. Saurian military analysts watched the footage dozens of times, studying every detail. The Kolvari warrior clans showed new respect for humans. Several species began sending recruitment offers to human military personnel. If you could not beat persistence predators, perhaps you should have them on your side. Back at the academy, life became strange for the human students. Hana, Do-hyun, and Mirai found themselves isolated in new ways. Not with hostility exactly, more like caution. Other students gave them space in hallways. The cafeteria developed invisible boundaries. Some species avoided them entirely. Others watched them with fascination. Surprisingly, some students sought them out. A Kolvari warrior named Tarek started sitting with them at meals. He said his people respected strength and honesty. Humans had both. A Pixari scientist named Iris began studying with Mirai. She wanted to understand the species that frightened her so much. The 3 humans handled the attention differently. Do-hyun tried to be friendly and approachable. He smiled more. He made jokes. He wanted to show that humans were not monsters. Mireille stayed focused on her studies. She figured the best way to prove humans belonged was through excellence. Hana remained quiet and observant as always. She watched how different species reacted. She noticed patterns. Herbivores feared humans but were polite from a distance. Ambush predators respected humans but kept their distance. Pack hunters like the Kolvari wanted to learn from humans. Each species brought their own evolutionary history to every interaction. 3 weeks after the incident, a human scientist published a paper that changed everything. Dr. Cuban was a xenopsychologist who had been studying human-alien interactions since first contact. His paper was called Social Persistence Predation: Understanding Human Cooperative Hunting Behavior. It went viral within hours. The paper explained something that other species had missed. Humans were not just persistence hunters. They were social persistence hunters. They coordinated in groups. They shared information. They developed complex plans spanning days or weeks. They had language specifically designed for planning future actions. Dr. Cuban compared human behavior to 300 other predatory species. The results were startling. Humans scored lowest on immediate physical threat. They were not the strongest or fastest or most venomous, but they scored highest on long-term threat sustainability. They could maintain pursuit longer than any other species. They could plan further ahead. They could cooperate more effectively. Most disturbing to the galactic community was the section on human warfare. Dr. Cuban detailed historical human conflicts, wars that lasted years, soldiers who fought in impossible conditions, armies that never surrendered. One example showed human soldiers marching through snow in winter, their feet freezing for weeks. Most species would have died in days. Humans just kept going. But the paper also highlighted human capacity for cooperation. Humans formed alliances easily. They kept promises. They remembered favors and returned them. The same traits that made them terrifying enemies made them valuable allies. Once humans committed to friendship, they maintained it with the same persistence they used for everything else. The Consortium Council called an emergency session. Representatives from 50 species gathered to discuss the human question. Should humans be restricted? Should their expansion be limited? Should there be special protocols for dealing with them? The debate lasted 3 days. Ambassador Sunwoo represented humanity. She was a career diplomat, calm and professional. She had spent her whole life preparing for moments like this. When she stood to address the council, every species fell silent. They all wanted to hear what the human would say. Ambassador Sunwoo did not deny human nature. She confirmed everything Dr. Cuban had written. Yes, humans were persistence predators. Yes, they could be very dangerous. Yes, they had evolutionary traits that frightened other species. She was honest about all of it, but she also presented data. Human crime rates in consortium space were below average. Human compliance with laws was above average. Human contributions to science, art, and culture were substantial. In the 3 generations since joining the consortium, humans had started no wars. They had broken no treaties. They had been model citizens. Ambassador Sunwoo explained that human persistence worked both ways. Yes, humans could pursue enemies relentlessly, but they could also pursue peace relentlessly. They could work toward cooperation with the same determination their ancestors used to hunt mammoths. The same patience that made them deadly hunters made them patient diplomats. She showed footage of human aid workers on disaster-struck worlds. Humans who worked around the clock for weeks, sleeping only a few hours each night. Humans who refused to leave until every survivor was found. Humans who returned year after year to help rebuild. The same endurance, the same persistence, but directed toward helping instead of hunting. The council listened. Some representatives nodded. Some looked skeptical. The vote that followed was close but decisive. Humans would not be restricted. They would be welcomed as full members of the consortium. But there would be cultural exchange programs, education initiatives, efforts to help all species understand each other better. Back at the academy, Dean Talvik made an announcement. The curriculum would change. All students would now study Earth evolutionary history. They would learn about human psychology. The goal was not to make other species fear humans. It was to help everyone understand the persistence predators living among them. Hana, Dohyun, and Mirai were asked to help develop the new courses. They would be teaching assistants, sharing their perspective as humans. Hana accepted immediately. This was important work. If the galaxy was going to accept humans, they needed to understand what they were accepting. The first class was awkward. 50 students sat in the amphitheater, the same room where the Ravager incident had occurred. They watched Hana nervously as she stood at the front. She did not try to make them comfortable. Instead, she was honest. She showed videos of persistence hunting. Ancient humans jogging after antelope under the hot sun. The antelope running in panic. Hours passing. The antelope slowing down. The humans maintaining the same steady pace. Eventually, the antelope collapsing from heat and exhaustion. The humans moving in to finish what they started. Some students looked disturbed. That was fine, Hana said. It was disturbing. Being hunted by humans was one of the most terrifying things an animal could experience on Earth. But she also showed the other side. Videos of human cooperation, human art, human kindness. The same species that hunted antelope also built hospitals and wrote poetry. A Centaurian student raised her hand. She asked the question everyone was thinking. How could other species trust humans? How could they know when humans would be friends and when they would be hunters? Hana's answer was simple but profound. You could trust humans the same way you trusted anyone. By getting to know them. By building relationships. By giving them reason to be allies instead of enemies. Humans were loyal to their friends. They protected their partners. They honored their commitments. The same persistence that made them dangerous made them reliable. After class, several students stayed to talk. They asked questions. They shared their fears. They admitted they had been avoiding humans. Hana listened to all of it without defensiveness. She understood their concerns. They were valid. Humans were scary. The important thing was moving forward with honesty. That night, Hana, Dohyun, and Mirai sat together in their common room. They talked about the changes happening around them. The galaxy was learning about humans, and humans were learning how others saw them. It was uncomfortable for everyone, but it was necessary. Dohyun said something that stuck with Hana. He said that maybe humans needed this. For thousands of years, humans were the apex predators on Earth. They never had to think about how their prey felt. Now they were living with other intelligent species. They had to consider how their nature affected others. It was good for them. It made them more thoughtful. Mirai agreed. She said the galaxy needed this too. Most species had achieved space travel easily. They had never faced serious threats. They had grown soft. Humans reminded them that the universe could be dangerous, that vigilance mattered, that strength had value. That was not a bad lesson. Hana looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were talking about humans, fearing them, respecting them, trying to understand them. It was just the beginning. There was still so much work to do. 6 months passed. The academy had become a different place. Human enrollment had increased from 3 students to 47. Earth was sending more young people to learn about the galaxy. And the galaxy was learning about Earth. Hana was now Director of Interspecies Relations, a position created specifically for her. She spent her days helping species understand each other, teaching classes, meeting with ambassadors, answering endless questions about human nature. It was exhausting work, but she was good at it. Dohyun had taken over the xenobiology program. He developed new courses that compared evolutionary strategies across different worlds. His most popular class was called Predator Psychology. Students learned about ambush hunters, pack hunters, and persistence hunters. They studied how different hunting methods shaped social behavior and intelligence. Mirai was revolutionizing the engineering department. She introduced human problem-solving methods, the concept of trying something, failing, learning, and trying again. Most species gave up after 1 or 2 failures. Humans kept trying dozens of times if necessary. Her students found this approach both frustrating and liberating. The consortium military had taken special interest in humans. General Haisong, a human advisor, was invited to demonstrate human combat tactics to officers from 30 different species. What he showed them changed galactic military doctrine forever. The general explained that human warfare was not about overwhelming force. It was about exhaustion, about making the enemy break before you did. He showed footage of human soldiers on long marches carrying heavy equipment, operating on minimal sleep. Things that would kill soldiers from most other species. Humans just kept going. He demonstrated human small unit tactics, how human squads communicated with minimal words, how they coordinated instinctively after training together. how they adapted plans on the fly when situations changed. Most alien military units needed constant communication and clear orders. Human units could operate independently for days. The most impressive demonstration was footage from a recent pirate incident. A human security team had been escorting a merchant convoy when pirates attacked. The pirates had superior numbers and weapons. Any sensible security force would have retreated. The humans refused. The battle lasted 2 weeks. The pirates would attack and retreat. The humans would repair their ships and continue pursuing. The pirates tried ambushes. The humans adapted. The pirates tried to lose them in asteroid fields. The humans followed. Finally, the pirates tried to flee to their home base 3 star systems away. The humans chased them the entire way. When the pirates reached their base, they found the humans already waiting. The security team had split up. One group followed. Another group calculated where the pirates would run and got there first. The pirates surrendered without firing a shot. They had realized the truth. The humans would never stop. Ever. The military officers watching this footage sat in stunned silence. One Kolvari general asked how human soldiers maintained morale during such extended operations. General Haesong's answer was simple. Humans did not need morale maintenance the way other species did. They just needed a clear objective. Once they committed to a goal, they pursued it. That was how they were built. Several species immediately proposed joint military initiatives. They wanted human units integrated into their forces. Not as soldiers exactly, as specialists in persistence operations, search and rescue, long-term patrols, situations that required endurance beyond normal limits. Humans excelled at those missions, but not everyone was comfortable with human military involvement. The Centaurian government formally objected. They argued that giving humans military authority was dangerous. What if humans decided to use their persistence for conquest? What if they could not be stopped once they started? Ambassador Sunwoo addressed these concerns directly. She invited the Centaurian ambassador to visit Earth, to see human civilization firsthand, to understand how humans actually lived when they were not being studied as specimens or feared as threats. The Centaurian ambassador accepted reluctantly. Her name was Lyra. She came from a traditional family that remembered the ancient stories of persistence predators. She had nightmares about creatures that never stopped hunting. Visiting the homeworld of persistence predators terrified her. But she went anyway. Earth surprised her. She had expected a world of warriors and hunters. Instead, she found farmers and artists. She visited human cities full of music and laughter. She saw human families caring for their children with patience and dedication. She met human scientists who had spent decades studying single questions without giving up. Ambassador Sunwoo took Lyra to a marathon race. Thousands of humans running for hours just for the challenge of it. Lyra watched in fascination as runners encouraged each other, as tired runners refused to quit, as people finished the race with bleeding feet and exhausted bodies, smiling with accomplishment. This was persistence too, Ambassador Sunwoo explained. Not for hunting, not for war, just for the joy of pushing themselves, of proving they could endure. Humans needed challenges the way other species needed food. Without something to strive for, they became restless and unhappy. Lyra began to understand. Human persistence was not just about hunting or fighting. It was fundamental to everything they did. They pursued education with persistence. They built relationships with persistence. They improved their societies with persistence. The same trait that made them deadly made them builders of civilization. On her last day on Earth, Lyra visited a human hospital. She watched human doctors and nurses working 12-hour shifts, caring for patients with endless patience. She saw them comfort frightened children. She saw them hold the hands of dying elderly. She saw them return day after day to help people they had never met before. A human nurse noticed Lyra watching. The nurse explained that caring for others was also persistence. Patients needed someone who would not give up on them, who would keep trying treatments when the first ones failed, who would sit with them hour after hour when they were scared. Humans were good at that because they never stopped caring. When Lyra returned to the Consortium Council, she gave a report that shocked her fellow Centaurians. Yes, humans were persistence predators. Yes, they were dangerous, but they were also persistent friends, persistent healers, persistent builders. Their nature was neutral. What mattered was how they chose to use it. The Centaurian government withdrew its objection to human military participation. More than that, They proposed a joint research initiative. Centaurian scientists would study human endurance. Human scientists would study Centaurian cooperation methods. Perhaps both species could learn from each other. Back at the academy, Dean Talvik called Hannah to her office again. The dean looked different now, less fearful, more thoughtful. She said she had been wrong about humans, not about their nature. She had been right about that, but about what that nature meant. Dean Talvik explained that she had been viewing humans through her own species' trauma. Centaurians feared persistence predators because persistence predators had nearly destroyed them. But that was ancient history. Modern humans were not hunting anyone. They were building, learning, helping. The dean made Hannah an offer. After graduation, would she consider a permanent position? Director of the new Interspecies Understanding Institute, a research center dedicated to helping all species understand each other better. It would be difficult work, important work, and it needed someone with persistence. Hannah accepted immediately. This was exactly the kind of challenge humans needed, a long-term goal that would take years of patient effort, the kind of mission that would let her use her nature for good, to help build bridges instead of fear. That evening, Hannah met with Do-hyun and Mirai. She shared the news. They celebrated together the three humans who had started this journey months ago, the three who had stood before a terrified ravager and changed the galaxy's understanding of humanity. Mirai raised her glass. She proposed a toast. To persistence, she said, not just for hunting or fighting, but for friendship, for learning, for building a better galaxy. The three humans drank together, knowing their work was far from over. Do-hyun added his own thought. He said that maybe this was why humans came to the stars, not to conquer or hunt, but to find something worthy of their persistence. A galaxy full of different species all trying to live together. That was a challenge that could occupy humanity for generations, and humans loved a good challenge. Outside the window, ships from 100 worlds came and went. Students from dozens of species walked the academy grounds together. Some still feared humans, some respected them, some admired them, but they were all learning, all growing, all moving toward understanding. The future was uncertain. There would be more challenges, more misunderstandings, more moments when human nature frightened others, but there would also be friendship, cooperation, the slow, patient building of trust. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was persistence. 1 year had passed since the Ravager incident. The Galactic Academy looked the same but felt completely different. Human students walked the halls freely now. Other species no longer avoided them. Instead, many sought them out as study partners, friends, even mentors. Hannah stood before a new class of first-year students. 60 individuals from 29 species filled the amphitheater. This lecture had become a tradition, the moment when new students learned about the persistence predators living among them, the moment when fear could transform into understanding. She did not sugarcoat the truth anymore. She started by showing footage of persistence hunting. Ancient humans chasing antelope across African plains. The animals running in terror. The humans maintaining a steady jog for hours. The inevitable moment when the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Some students looked away. That was fine. It was meant to be disturbing. But then she showed the other side. Human parents caring for children with endless patience. Human teachers spending years helping students learn. Human doctors refusing to give up on patients. Human scientists pursuing questions for decades. The same persistence, different purpose. A Pixar student raised her hand. Her voice was nervous but curious. She asked how persistence predators could also be so caring, how the same species that hunted mammoths to extinction could also build hospitals and schools. It seemed contradictory. Hannah explained that persistence was just a tool, like a knife that could cut food or hurt someone. What mattered was the choice. Humans chose to direct their persistence toward building instead of destroying, toward helping instead of hunting. That choice defined modern humanity. After the lecture, Hannah had a special announcement. The Academy had arranged something unprecedented. The Ravager from the original incident was returning. It had spent the past year in rehabilitation, working with specialists who helped traumatized predators. The creature had agreed to participate in another demonstration. News networks from across the consortium requested permission to broadcast. This would be the moment everyone had been waiting for. Could a Death World predator overcome its fear of humans? Could two apex predators from different worlds share space without conflict? The amphitheater was packed when the day arrived. Twice as many observers as last time. Diplomats and military officials filled the upper galleries. Students crowded into every available seat. The same cage was wheeled in, the same force field activated. The Ravager looked different, healthier, calmer. But when Hana, Do-hyun, and Mirai entered the arena, the creature still tensed. Its four eyes tracked their movement with laser focus. For a moment, everyone thought it might panic again. The old fear was still there, written into the Ravager's genes over millions of years. But the Ravager did not retreat. It held its ground, muscles tense but not fleeing. This was progress. This was a death-world predator choosing courage over instinct, choosing to trust the rehabilitation specialists who had told it the humans meant no harm. Hana stopped at the force field. She extended her hand, palm down in a non-threatening gesture. She spoke in a low, steady voice. She was not here to hunt. She was here to prove that predators could coexist. That evolution did not have to determine destiny. That choice mattered more than instinct. Mirai spoke next. She thanked the Ravager for its courage. She acknowledged how difficult this was. Evolution had taught the creature that persistence predators were the most dangerous thing in the universe. But here, in this new age, old fears could give way to new possibilities. Do-hyun added his perspective. He talked about human fear, about how humans felt afraid just like everyone else. But they had learned to act despite fear. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was choosing to face fear anyway. The Ravager was demonstrating true courage right now. The Ravager made a sound, low and rumbling. The xenozoology database identified it as a pack-bonding vocalization. The creature was acknowledging the humans, not as prey, not as threats, but as fellow predators worthy of respect. At Hana's signal, the force field powered down. No barrier now separated the humans from the Ravager. Every species in the amphitheater held their breath. This was the moment. Would instinct take over? Would the Ravager flee or attack? Would the humans survive their own demonstration? Hana stepped into the cage. Do-hyun and Mirai followed. The Ravager trembled but did not move away. It watched them with all four eyes, every sense alert, but it chose to stay. It chose to trust. Hana extended her hand slowly. She moved with careful precision, telegraphing every motion. Her palm touched the Ravager's shoulder plate. The creature's breathing accelerated but remained controlled. This was trust being built in real time. Not friendship yet, but mutual recognition. Two predators acknowledging each other without violence. Mirai and Do-hyun approached from different angles. They moved slowly, giving the Ravager time to accept their presence. They placed their hands on its flank. The creature accepted their touch. It made another pack-bonding sound, this one stronger and more confident. The three humans stepped back together. The Ravager watched them but made no aggressive moves. Hana turned to address the amphitheater. Her voice carried clearly in the silent room. This was the lesson, she said. Fear was natural. Caution was survival. But fear did not have to mean hatred. Different species could understand each other, could work together, could build something greater than what any could achieve alone. The amphitheater erupted in sound. Not fear this time, but approval, respect, hope. Students from dozens of species stood and applauded. The Ravager, a creature that had once been terrified of humans, stood calmly in its cage surrounded by three persistence predators. 5 years passed. The Galactic Academy became known across the consortium as the premier institution for interspecies cooperation. Humans held positions throughout the faculty. They taught everything from persistence strategy to human ethics. They helped shape a generation of students who understood that differences could be strengths. The Ravager became a permanent resident. It worked with students every day, teaching them about predator psychology. It had a particular connection with human students who treated it with the respect one predator shows another. The creature that once called for help at the sight of a human now voluntarily participated in research projects. Humanity's position in the consortium had transformed completely. Human diplomats were valued for their persistence in peace negotiations. Human scientists were celebrated for their refusal to give up on difficult questions. Human engineers were sought after for their ability to keep trying when others quit. The same traits that made humans terrifying predators made them invaluable partners. Other species learned to work with human strengths. Pixari benefited from human long-term planning. Saurians appreciated human strategic thinking. Kolvari found common ground in human pack coordination. Centaurians, once the most fearful, now counted humans among their closest allies. On graduation day, Hana delivered a speech to a packed amphitheater. She talked about the journey from that first terrifying demonstration to today. She acknowledged that humans would always be persistence predators. Evolution did not change in a few generations, but evolution had given humans another gift: choice. Yes, humans could chase down prey until it collapsed. Yes, they could pursue enemies across star systems. Yes, they had the patience and determination to maintain pressure for years if necessary. But they could also choose to pursue peace with the same determination. To build civilizations with the same persistence. To explore the universe with the same patience. The galaxy had a choice too. They could fear human persistence, seeing only threats. Or they could embrace it, recognizing that persistent allies were the most valuable allies possible. Persistent partners never abandoned each other. Persistent friends stuck together through any hardship. Persistent peace seekers never gave up on cooperation. She gestured to the graduating students. 60 individuals from 34 species, herbivores and predators, natural allies and natural enemies, all learning to work together, all choosing cooperation over conflict, all proving that understanding could overcome instinct. Hana's final words became famous across the consortium. Humanity did not come to the stars to hunt. They came to explore, to learn, to grow. They brought their persistence, yes, but they brought something else too. The choice to use that persistence for building rather than destroying. And in that choice lay the true measure of any species' worth. 10 years after the Ravager incident, the consortium established the first human-led peacekeeping force. The irony was not lost on anyone. Persistence predators now served as galactic peace enforcers. They pursued conflict resolution with the same determination their ancestors used to chase prey. And they were remarkably effective. When humans committed to peace, they achieved it. Hana was now Ambassador Hana, leading humanity's delegation to the Consortium Council. Doyun published groundbreaking research on interspecies cooperation. Mirai designed the next generation of starships. The three friends who had stood before a terrified Ravager now shaped galactic policy. The Ravager, impossibly old now, still lived at the Academy. It had trained 3 generations of students. When young students asked why it stayed, why it worked with humans despite its instincts, the creature's answer was always the same: